Photographs can capture some of our most important moments and speak 1,000 words, but not every photo can relay the disturbing backstory, the tragic next few moments, or the horror lurking nearby. In today's video, we will cover some of the more innocent-looking photographs with truly disturbing backstories. The first picture is a seemingly ordinary innocent photograph. A girl sits atop a man's shoulders. The subjects in the photo are tourists from Spain visiting the Irish town of Omagh. There is not much of note in the photograph, just their everyday happenings on Market Street on the 15th of August 1998. To the right is a parked red Vauxhall car, but just a few moments after this photograph was taken, a bomb which was planted inside the car detonated. The bomb is understood to have been planted by the real IRA, a splinter group from the IRA. In April of 1998, a few months prior to the bombing, the Good Friday Agreement was signed. This was to bring about the end of the Troubles, a decade-long period of sectarian conflict in Northern Ireland. The real IRA split in order to oppose the Good Friday Agreement and to continue the tactics of the Troubles. One notable tactic of the IRA was to plant bombs in commercial or government locations. Warnings would often be sent to the authorities ahead of time, in a bid to reduce civilian casualties. But these messages were often inconsistent. Some were clear about the threat and location, whilst others led to confusion. In the case of the Omagh bombing, the confusion would be deadly. On the afternoon on the 15th of August 1998, the red Vauxhall, loaded with a 500-pound fertilizer bomb, made its way to Omagh. The plan was to park it outside the Omagh courthouse, but there was no available parking. So instead, the car was parked on a nearby street, Market Street, outside a clothing shop. A coded warning from the real IRA was received by the authorities about a bomb placed near the Omagh courthouse on Main Street. As a result, the area around the courthouse was evacuated. But the problem, however, was that there is no Main Street in Omagh. However, not far from the courthouse was Market Street, considered to be the main high street of the town. Due to the confusion, this area, only a few hundred yards from the courthouse, was not evacuated. In fact, police unwittingly ushered pedestrians towards where the car bomb had been parked. Just after 3 p.m, the bomb detonated. Those in the crowded high streets were struck by the explosive force of the bomb. Shrapnel from the car and shattered glass flew everywhere. Witnesses and survivors of the blast searching for loved ones described the scene as if it were from a disaster movie. The dead and the dying were left strewn across the street, along with the destroyed limbs of many. Many of those who were injured were amputated by the explosion, suffered severe burns, and serious head injuries. The youngest victim was Breda Devane. She wasn't even 2. She was shopping for shoes with her mother when the bomb detonated. Her mother, Tracy, was left in a coma for 2 months following the blast, and awoke to the horrifying news that her daughter was dead. Another survivor was Susan Travis. She was in town to have lunch and to buy a plane ticket with her mother. When she was struck by the blast, she recalled the following. "When the bomb went off, it was like a dull bang. I think that's because it was so loud, my hearing was affected. I remember my entire body feeling pressure. My face felt like it was being squashed. I remember being flung back, and I realized my mother must have been blown into the air when the bomb exploded. I then looked down, and my 2 legs were in front of me, but I realized that I didn't have my left foot. It had been completely blown off." In all, 29 people were murdered, and a further 220 were injured. The subjects of the photograph did survive, but the photographer did not. The camera was recovered from the debris, and the photo published highlighting the close brush with death. The blast also had ramifications for the peace process. For some, this was evidence that the IRA had no intentions of disbanding, But Sinn Féin, the political arm of the IRA, were quick to condemn the attack and the attempt to disrupt the peace process. Attempts were made by the Provisional IRA to quash the Real IRA. The Real IRA claimed responsibility for the attack, but stated that civilians were not the target. This photograph, just moments before the deadly bombing, will remain one of the more disturbing photographs in recent history. To stand so close to a car bomb, to be unaware that you're just moments away from death, is truly a disturbing thought to process. Next, we have the SS Grand Camp. On the 16th of April 1947, in the industrial port town of Texas City, Texas, one of the worst industrial disasters would occur. A recommissioned cargo ship by the name of SS Grand Camp was docked and was being loaded with material needed to help rebuild war-torn Europe. But its deadly cargo would ignite, causing a massive explosion, one of the largest non-nuclear blasts in history. And just before this disaster struck, a photograph was taken of the smouldering Grand Camp, just moments before catastrophe. The SS Grand Camp was a Liberty ship, docked at Texas City's Port Terminal No. 1. It was a standard cargo vessel, built during World War II, and was in 1947 employed in peacetime commerce. The ship was to transport all manner of goods, including peanuts, twine, cotton, and engineering equipment. But its most notable cargo was a shipment of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, around 2,300 tons of the stuff. Ammonium nitrate is a seemingly harmless substance, commonly used as fertilizer. But under certain conditions, namely when exposed to heat, confinement, and contamination, it can become something deadly, a powerful explosive. The ammonium nitrate loaded onto the Grand Camp was stored tightly in brown paper sacks. As the dock workers were loading the fertilizer, some noted how it was warm to the touch. It was not long after that dock workers noticed smoke starting to rise from the cargo hold. Attempts were made to put out the fire with water and fire extinguishers. 2 fire trucks were soon dispatched, followed shortly by 2 fire trucks from the city's volunteer fire department. At this point, however, the area beneath the ship's hatches was heating so quickly that it was unlikely that water could have done much to extinguish the fire. The captain of the ship, concerned about the damage to the cargo, ordered that the holds be closed and filled with steam, in hopes to put out the fire. The problem was that ammonium nitrate is an oxidizer, meaning that it can sustain a fire in such conditions. The heat of the ship's cargo quickly approached 850 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature at which ammonium nitrate can explode. What's more, the steam may have triggered a reaction, turning the fertilizer into nitrous oxide, providing even more oxygen and therefore fuel to the imminent explosion. A chemical worker on the docks heard the commotion, and he went to have a look. He quickly took a photograph. The image is deceptively ordinary at first glance. The ship sits quietly at the pier, a few bystanders, dock workers and firefighters gathering around the ship. A plume of smoke can be seen, starting to turn black and darken the sky, but there were no clear signs that the worst was about to happen. At 9:12 a.m., the ship exploded. The blast tore through the ship with unimaginable force. The ammonium nitrate, heated, confined, and volatile, detonated with the power of a small nuclear bomb. Witnesses 40 miles away even heard the blast. Windows shattered in Houston, over 30 miles inland. Seismographs registered it as an earthquake. A 2-ton anchor from the Grand Camp was thrown over 1.5 miles away. For around 2,000 feet, the explosion caused massive damage to at least 1,000 buildings. Even airplanes were blown out of the sky. The shockwave flattened everything nearby. Dock workers were, of course, instantly killed. The nearby Monsanto chemical plant beside the ship was obliterated, claiming the 145 lives of the workers who were inside at the time. The city's volunteer 28-man fire department was all but wiped out. Only 1 firefighter survived the explosion. In the aftermath, Texas City looked like a war zone. Fires raged for hours. Hospitals overflowed. Stunned survivors stumbled through the smoke and the ash. The casualty estimates came to a total of 567. Over 100 people were declared missing. Their bodies were never recovered. More than 5,000 people were injured, flooding the hospitals with all manner of injuries. The total cost of the damage in today's money equates to over $6 billion. And to make matters even worse, another ship, the SS Highflyer, docked nearby, was also loaded with ammonium nitrate. This ship also caught fire from the first explosion. It had become unmoored and drifted to collide with another ship. For hours, the crew tried to prevent another explosion, but at 1:10 in the morning, it too exploded, compounding the nightmare. Another 2 people were killed as they tried to stop further carnage. The Grand Camp disaster, or the Texas City disaster, is the deadliest industrial accident in US history. The photograph taken before the explosion has a grim reminder how quickly the ordinary can become catastrophic. And now we arrive to the final photograph. This final photo looks like nothing. It looks like a discolored stone, or perhaps the wet imprint of a person sat on the steps. But when you realize that the photograph was taken shortly after the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, a more disturbing explanation is presented. On the 6th of August 1945, a modified Boeing B-29 Superfortress, given the moniker Enola Gay, flew over Hiroshima in the early morning. The little boy bomb was delivered by parachute at 8:15 in the morning. It was detonated around 2,000 feet above the city. The resulting blast was the equivalent of around 12 to 15,000 tons of TNT. Such explosive force was achieved with just 2% of the bomb's uranium-achieving fission. At least 80,000 men, women and children died instantly. But the nuclear explosion would cause other phenomena apart from the massive destruction and the loss of life. Dubbed nuclear shadows, the last moments of a person's life were captured eerily on the walls and floors. The phenomenon behind these nuclear shadows is rooted in physics. When the bomb detonated, it released an intense burst of heat and light so powerful that it bleached the surfaces in its path. Anything that blocked the light, which could be a railing, a bicycle, or a person, would leave behind a darkened area where the light had been obstructed. To put it simply, people and objects acted as stencils in a deadly flash of energy. The photo in question is dubbed Human Shadow Etched in Stone. It was taken at the steps of a bank shortly after the bomb detonated. What the shadow tells us is that a person had been sitting there at the moment of detonation. Their body blocked the thermal radiation, and, when their body vaporized in the heat of the nuclear fire, it left behind a clear outline. Their last moment alive became permanently recorded on stone. In January of 1971, part of the stone containing the shadow was cut away and transferred to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. The nuclear shadows are akin to photographs themselves. They captured an ordinary person doing something ordinary, like sitting on the steps of a bank that day in August of 1945. The nuclear shadows of Hiroshima are not in and of themselves sensational or graphic. Instead, they show an everyday life interrupted in the most violent way possible. They say a photograph can speak 1,000 words. But a photograph can rarely tell you what happens after. It is through understanding the context, the background, and the events leading up to what is captured in the photograph that we can truly appreciate our history. And in these cases, a photograph can reveal a truly disturbing event in grim reality.